with the DocRocker again. I'm Jeff Bonomo with the DocRocker, and this is our homework assignment. Every week, we give each other an album we've never heard before, and then 1 week later, we spit it back at each other into Zoomiverse. And this week, we have the almighty Iron Maiden's new album, Senjutsu. There's been 6 records released since Adrian Smith and Bruce Dickinson came back 22 years ago. How about that? It's been 22 years, 6 records, and this is what, the 17th album, I think?
I think so, yeah. I think it's number 17.
I
can't believe the Reformation is already in play for 22 years. It still feels like it just started, you know?
And
just yesterday was Brave New World.
Their last album, I believe, Book of Souls, was like 6 years ago. And it just seems like the albums get longer and longer and longer. I don't know if this is the longest Iron Maiden album, but I'm pretty sure it is. This is another double album by Iron Maiden, Senjutsu. So, when you take it away, you could start.
All right.
Because I'm sure you have a lot to say about this album.
Well, naturally, this was, anyone who follows our show here will know that this was going to be our inevitable assignment the week that it drops. And this is going to be the thing that Jeff and I both assign each other because we're huge Iron Maiden fans and we were looking forward to this album since it was announced back in the summer, where it was confirmed and all the stuff was promoted for it and it was great and we're all super excited. So here we are. So as of today's recording, the album's been out a week. So I listened to it naturally the day it dropped, was very excited. And of course I follow, I'm part of like the unofficial Iron Maiden fan club Facebook group as well. And I follow a lot of posts on there and I'm always interacting with people on that and sharing all of their posts under the Rock Talk thing. And I know I'm not alone in saying this, but it still will make my opinion no less divisive. But on my first listen, I was not impressed. I really didn't like the first couple of tracks. I really wasn't feeling it. I thought it, for the most part, musically felt very, very tired. You know, there was a lot of kind of sameness to like the overall, which is, I know what kind of like people who don't like the Reformation era stuff kind of write it off for that same reason. Like all the stuff kind of sounds the same and the songs are a little over bloated and they're too long and, you know, the guys aren't getting any younger and all that sort of stuff. Now, granted, the first single, The Writing on the Wall, I really, really liked. I was very impressed with that. I buried my head in the sand when that song was dropped a couple weeks ago. I didn't want to hear it before hearing the rest of the album, so I purposefully avoided it. So I got to hear it proper for the first time when listening to the full album. And as soon as the intro started, I was like, all right, here we go. Here it is. Here's the big one that everyone's all hyped about. And that one blew me away. I loved it. I thought it was awesome. It was real heavy and real kick-ass, and it was a real kind of refresher for me. After the opening 2 tracks, which were a little lukewarm for me, I didn't like them. Then as the album went on, it was kind of more like, all right, I mean, it's good. It's good stuff. It's not bad by any means. It's really good music, but like just given my overall standards for what I would come to expect from one of my favorite metal bands, it was really falling flat. As we got into the second half of the album, that changed. You know, the further into it I went, the more it really started to grow and develop and evolve into this really cool, like, oh, this is great. You know, the first one after The Writing that I really liked was The Time Machine. I thought that was, you know, really proggy and really cool, and it had a really cool kind of arc and story to it, and it was really fun, and I liked it. Darkest Hour, I thought was a real big step for like a kind of songwriter's perspective from them, if that makes sense. I feel like it was a little bit more adventurous with, you know, their choice of chord progressions and song structure, and, you know, it sounds like they're really kind of flexing some new musical muscles here, and I appreciated that one. I didn't love the track on the first listen, but I appreciated it, you know, that it was a step in the right direction. But then the tail end of the album totally changed my feelings, with the last 3 tracks all being absolute masterpieces, real knockouts that I was very impressed with. Death of the Celts was, as soon as it started, I was like, all right, here we go. It's 10 minutes. I know I'm going to love this. And all 10 minutes of it.
10 minutes long.
It was awesome. It didn't feel like 10 minutes at all. My favorite track by far is The Parchment, which has a lot of like real cool, like Book of Souls feeling kind of stuff. You know, there's a lot of like different flavors for scales and harmonies, and it kind of goes in a lot of different directions, and it's really epic and it's really fun and it's really heavy, and it's just awesome. It's probably one of my favorite Iron Maiden songs of all time. Like this would the Parchment is making me like I gotta go back to like my top 20 list and revise it. The Parchment is awesome. And if you're not super sold on the album, check it out just for the last two tracks, The Parchment and then the closing track, Hell on Earth, which I think is easily one of their best. So it was a little bit of a slow start for me for the whole album on the first listen, but by the end of it, I was like, oh, this is great. In a lot of ways, they've really outdone themselves. Now, on a second listen, I gave it a couple days. I talked it over with a few other friends and fellow fans and checked out some posts on different Facebook pages and stuff like that. And sure enough, a lot of people kind of felt the same way I did, which I took some solace in that. Like, all right, I'm not the only one. Like, all right, some people thought it was a little stale or whatever, but yeah, so I gave it a couple days and then I just revisited it the other day before, tonight we're filming the podcast. The second listen for me went over much, much better, where even the tracks that I didn't like the first time, like Stratego, I really liked the second time. Maybe it's just, I don't know, something about it. I was in a different mindset, or just now that I kind of knew what I was going to expect, now that I know what the overall experience was, I kind of got to go in, okay, I know I'm not going to love these ones or whatever, but I ended up really liking it a lot more the second time. So I'm sure it's one of those, maybe just a lot of repeat listens, and it might become one of my favorite albums. I like it. But that's pretty much the skinny on my first week with Senjutsu. That's my first impression. It's awesome. It's got a lot of really strong tracks, and even the stuff that's not so hot is still really good. And I've seen a lot of fans post songs that I didn't like that they've thought were their favorites. So there's definitely something here for you if you're a Maiden fan, for sure. So what about you? What did you think the first time?
You listened to it 2 times only?
Only twice. Just twice.
Yeah, I listened to it a few more times than that. But first impression, when it came out like that day, I sat down to listen to it as much as I possibly could, through the work day. And I thought it was good. And I knew I'd have to go back to it. There was too much. What Iron Maiden, especially from A Matter of Life and Death on, Iron Maiden changed again. Like even like the 22-year-long, Reformation era, like you like to call it. The first three albums? No, the first two albums, right? Yeah. Brave New
World, Dance of Death. Yeah.
The third one was A Matter of Life and Death, right?
I think so. I think you're right.
I'm not missing one. Yeah. Okay. From A Matter of Life and Death on, I think the band changed again. If you listen to Brave New World and you listen to this one, there's a difference in, I know I could hear a difference in the mix, number one, and just the way they are leaning more towards their prog rock influences. They're leaning more towards King Crimson and Jethro Tull and old Genesis and stuff like that. That I hear more in A Matter of Life and Death, a little bit in the Final Frontier, Book of Souls definitely, and this one. This is a prog rock album. This is a slightly proggish metal album, I'll say. Yeah. It's not like Crazy Dream Theater stuff. It's not like that kind of prog, but it's proggy enough because there are changes. There are little motifs that Iron Maiden are known for, but there's just different things. All the songs are, even the shorter ones they're kind of complex. Even Darkest Hour, which is a simple song, that kind of goes and it doesn't do anything. It doesn't change a lot. I don't think. I think that's the one I'm thinking of. Yeah.
Yeah, relative to the other tracks, it changes very little, but it's still pretty progressive. You're right. Yeah, Darkest Hour, that one definitely changes the least compared to the other tracks, but it's still very progressive. You're totally right.
There's a lot of progressive elements in this album that I think are turning some people off, I think, because you listen to it like you listen to any Iron Maiden album, and it's like, I don't get it, But when you start giving a little deeper dive, because I think on your third listen, your fourth listen, you're going to start hearing things you missed, that just kind of slip by. This is not Number of the Beast, This is not Power Slave or even Seventh Son. This is something that I wish came right after A Matter of Life and Death. Like, this is the best album they released since A Matter of Life and Death. That's what I say. In a nutshell, that's my review. Okay, I'll start with some of the songs. Senjutsu, that opens up the album. There's like this dominant keyboard, which I like. A lot of people are like, oh, Iron Maiden keyboards. I love it. It just adds to it. look, and put more keyboards in Iron Man songs. I don't even care. I love it. The tribal drum patterns that show off Nickel Big Brain skill. I like that. It's not a great song. It's not something I'd probably be skipping over it more times and listen to it, but I liked it because it was a little different. Darkest Hour, like you talked about, it kind of was where everything I think kicks in more. Like that's when the album starts getting great. I like that album for there's a simpler guitar. It's atmospheric. There's like these warm keyboard sounds through it. Bruce just sings like really melodic. There's something about that song I like, because maybe it's just because it's simpler. I don't know. It was really digest. Days of Future Past. That one's great. Fast verses, mid-paced chorus. It's just a great song. The Writing on the Wall, kind of like the video. I'm trying to separate the video from the song. It's kind of hard because the video is really cool. And I've listened to this one a lot because it came out first. And I know you were like, don't ruin it. By the time you get to the album, you're not going to want to listen to this anymore. And you're right. Because I've listened to it over and over again. But that song, I like. I like that song because like it has like this epic feel to it, but there's like this cool, like almost like a folk metal sound to some of it.
Yeah,
mixed with like a classic rock, almost a southern rock feel in some parts too.
It's
almost
definitely got some southern feel to it. That's what I like about it.
Yeah, it was really neat. It was really I liked that. That was to me great first single. I like it because it's like, hey, this is Iron Man, but we're a little different now, Strigo, I like the galloping riff. It's a song that's based on the galloping riff. It's your standard. It's not a bad standard galloping Maiden song, but it doesn't do much for me. It really doesn't. I hate to say it.
That one definitely falls flat.
It's okay. It's okay. Death of the Celts. That was like the Klansman part 2.
Yeah.
But only for the first 4 minutes, because then the last 6 minutes it goes into this nice proggy jam. It's like it almost harkens back to like,
I thought it was
like
great.
like the middle of like Seventh Son, when they just start going everywhere. It just reminded me of that without ripping that off. Really, it doesn't sound anything like that, but it reminded me of that because that's how proggy it gets. They just go all different places. I love it. Like the last, and I'm not a big fan of instrumental music. I want to hear lyrics and vocals, but this, I'll probably listen to the last half of Death of the Celts more than the first half.
That's awesome.
The Parchment, you're absolutely right. Best song on the album, I think.
Oh, by far. No contest. Fight me on that, you don't agree.
Very power slavey,
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
It just gave me that like Egyptian vibe. I don't know how to describe it. It's such a great song. But Hell on Earth is perfect way to end the album.
Yes.
That reminds me a little bit of Blood Brothers in the beginning. It's very moody. It's very melancholic, stereotypical Maiden gallop around the 2-minute mark. But then like when Bruce starts singing, he's singing over this really neat melodic guitar line. Like whatever the guitar is doing, he's singing the same thing the guitar's playing, which is, I like when he does that. He doesn't do that often, but when they do it,
that happens a lot on this album compared to other albums.
Yeah.
I've noticed that happens on like 3 or 4 different tracks. I'm kind of mixed about that. Like, I guess it depends on my mood. Sometimes I really like it. Sometimes I really hate it. I don't know how I feel about it.
I like it in this song. I mean, it doesn't do it very long, but I like it in this one. The lyrics are like angry and pissed off. Bruce's delivery really matches that lyrical content. It's a perfect end to the album, and it sums up what we're going through for the last year and a half. Really, I haven't read into the lyrics, so I'm not sure if it's exactly about that. But just Hell on Earth reminds me of like everyone just being like, "Damn it."
We're all fed up with COVID at this point.
Everyone's fed up with everything, The song is simply fantastic, though. Now, the bad side of this album is it's too long. It's too long. There's several tracks that, like, parts of them feel like it's been done before. And I get it. The whole Iron Maiden trope of the dun, 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 I get that. That's a thing. I get it. But
you get to the point where you hear yet another song in E, though. And you hear
Right.
like even
Yeah.
some of the same like melodic figures that are just like straight up copied from other songs that they've already done.
Oh,
There were a number of moments.
when I was driving home today, there is, and I really wish I would have wrote it down and I forgot because I was listening to this album when I was driving home.
Mhm.
I want to say, I don't know if it's in Time Machine. It may be in Time Machine. That there's this riff, there's this run, there's a guitar run that I heard it somewhere before. It's in another Maiden song. It sounds like an Adrian Smith thing. I'm not sure if it is in Time Machine. No, I wish I would have wrote it down.
I think it's in one of the middle tracks. It might be in either Lost in a Lost World or Days of Future Past. I think I know what you're talking about though, because there was definitely a moment I remember like distinctly on my first listen. Like I've literally heard these same exact notes before in another song.
Yeah. So
and while it's one of those things like, well, yeah, if you like it in the other song, then you should like it if they do it again. Well, no, not really. Like, you know, you get to a point like, yeah, like there are, like you said, there are so many like stylistic tropes that define this band's sound and can become to be expected in a new album, and those are things that you can come to appreciate. But when like it's literally like a note for note repeat of something that's already been done that we've already heard, it's like, then why are you doing this on a new album? You know. And it really put a bad taste in my mouth for sure. I was like, God, I've already heard this before.
Yeah, there's one part that really sticks out. And like I said, maybe the next listen I'll be able to point it out. But,
we'll be texting each other. Post it on the Facebook group.
I hear it,
here's the song. Listen at this minute mark. It's the same exact thing. And then maybe someone can tell us what other song it was from. We can make a little game out of it. You know, kind of try to figure out where they did it before, because they definitely did it before.
It's gonna come to me. I know it's gonna come. It's gonna hit me like a bolt of lightning. And
It'll be as soon as I hit end call. As soon as we're done recording tonight.
Now here's another problem I have with the album is the production. They keep on using Kevin Shirley, and you know what? I don't like him. I just don't like the production. I don't like it. It's a little bit better, I think, than Book of Souls production, which I didn't really like that. I don't like the production on A Matter of Life and Death. Like from there on, I don't like the production. I don't.
I've heard that before.
Okay,
you're not the only person I've heard say that.
There's something missing. I can't put my finger on it, but like, listen to
it. Definitely sounds different than Brave New World.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I can't put my finger on it either. I actually like the Kevin Shirley albums. I mean, Matter of Life and Death is my favorite, and it still is.
Yeah, I like the album too. It's just I think that it would sound even better just with better production or different production. Because I'm not a better producer than Kevin Shirley, so you know. What I mean?
Yeah, no, neither am I. But there were definitely some moments. I noticed it a lot on Senjutsu, not the track, the album as a whole. I mean, there were like a lot of moments where like I really couldn't hear Bruce clearly, you know, like his track is just getting buried by other stuff. And that's something I've never really had an issue with on any of the other later albums. Even Book of Souls, I thought like every line he sang, I heard crystal clear. But this one, there's definitely some bad mixing.
His vocals are definitely buried. His vocals are buried in parts.
Yeah, and it's noticeable. There's noticeable kind of some spots. It's not consistent, you know, it's definitely inconsistent.
That was my next point. Was the vocals. You know, a couple things. I mean, Bruce is Bruce. Bruce is going to be Bruce. It seems like Bruce is pushing his range on this album. And in some ways, I wish they would tune kind of like they do on Bruce's solo albums, because his voice sounds so much more powerful on those solo albums. We are going back a few ways, but if you listen to even Brave New World and you listen to what Bruce did just a few years before that with Chemical Wedding was like, they did all kind of weird drop tunings on that album, and it was awesome.
It's some of its best stuff.
Sounding so much more ballsy.
It's so good. You're right. You're absolutely right.
It is Bruce though, you know, so it's still good. He's still doing good, but it seems like he's at that point. He's not a young man, and it's just, I think if they would do some different tunings, maybe it would help. You know, drop it a little bit, and it would sound, you know, a little more powerful, because he sounds like he's straining a little bit here.
I would love to hear a Maiden set in D standard instead of E standard. It would be incredible, and it would be so much heavier with just that little dip in pitch.
Well, some of the stuff, that's the stuff that he did with Adrian on the first two, or not the first two, his third and fourth solo album.
Mm-hmm.
Or no, I'm wrong. That was his fourth and fifth solo album. Accident of Birth and Chemical Wedding were with Adrian Smith, and that was he did Tattooed Millionaire, he did Balls to Picasso, then he did Skunk Works. Yeah, so then he did Accident of Birth. And Accident of Birth is such a great album. We could do a whole podcast on just those two albums because that was that helped him, I think, get back to where he needed to be with Maiden. But those albums are heavy.
They're very heavy, and they're really good too. They're melodic, they're artistic, they're consistent. There's just it's 5 stars in every musical respect.
Now, getting back to this though, there's not really a song that I think sucks on this album. Some of them are a little too long. It's a long album, but it is a good heavy metal album. It's dynamic, it's entertaining, and I still say it's probably overall the best thing they've done since A Matter of Life and Death.
That's fair.
That's what I got so far. I've listened to, probably 5 or 6 times, and I'm going to listen to it more. I'll probably listen to this one more than I listened to Book of Souls.
I'm going to definitely listen to it a few more times, but I really liked Book of Souls. When that came out, I remember being thoroughly impressed. But even some of like the kind of flub tracks that didn't really stand the test of time since, like I go through that one on occasion now, and they're still like, oh yeah, I forgot how really kick-ass this chorus is in this one, like Tears of a Clown, for example. It's like one of those songs that like I get the feeling like no one talks about it, and it's like that's a really cool song, and there's a lot of really, really, really cool instrumental moments in there. And that's kind of like how I feel about the whole album, is kind of like that song. Like it's really, really consistent. And I would say, comparing the 2 most recent albums, I would say Book of Souls is better, but that's just me.
That's okay. To me, Book of Souls was too much. There was too much of it, and too much that there was some really good stuff, but I had to dig through I'm not going to say bad stuff, but I had to just dig through some okay stuff to find the good stuff. Here, I think each song, there's not one that I'm like, because there's at least parts of every song here that I liked. Even the shorter ones and even the long ones, it's like, all right, but I kind of want to be like, all right, you could write a 10-minute epic. That's great. Thank you. Stop doing that. Give me the clairvoyant again,
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like when you compare like how progressive a lot of the newer stuff is, and you compare it to like the earlier progressive ventures they've done with Somewhere in Time and Seventh Son, all those songs are short. There's not like, I think the longest song on Seventh Son is the title track, and it's like 7 minutes only. I don't think any of them are really that long. They're all like 4 or 5 minute, but they're all bangers, and they all take you on such a trip from start to finish. It's incredible. But like, I definitely get the general distaste that happens with a lot of like the Reformation stuff. Like I said before, like of a lot of the newer songs being a little over bloated. I could definitely see where they're coming from. They're even guilty of it on A Matter of Life and Death. And even though I would argue that every musical moment of those longer songs on that album, it's all musically coherent, and it helps to kind of set the atmosphere and tell the story and show the musicianship of the members of the band involved. I love that album, every minute of it, start to finish. And I know that's not a popular opinion, but with Senjutsu, I could see where fans that say stuff like that are coming from. Like those flaws are much more obvious to me on this album than in previous installments.
So what do you give it out of 10?
Ooh, I'd still give it an 8. It's a great album, and like I said, when it did have the moments that did hit me, it hit me really hard, like instantly, like, whoa, this is incredible music that I've never heard from them before. It's just that there's such a disparity with those couple of tracks that I didn't really love the first time, and there's always going to be like, let me just force myself to listen to this because I know it's good, but I know I'm not going to like it as much as the other albums, and that just makes me sad because it's brand new and I'm super excited. I was looking forward to it, and I hate to say I was disappointed by it.
I'm going to give it the same. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. I like it. It's a Maiden album, so I'm kind of, it is going to be an 8. Like I give Book of Souls a 7.5. So I give this a little bit more than Book of Souls. I give it an 8. It's not the best Maiden out of the last 22 years, but it's not the worst either. So it's not bad. I think it'll grow on me a little bit, but I probably will go back to Brave New World the most, and A Matter of Life and Death probably second most, because that's what I do. And you actually were the one that made me revisit A Matter of Life and Death, because that went from second to last, or no, third to last.
Kind of like a meh album for you.
Yeah, I didn't give it enough time before we started doing this podcast, but now it's probably my second favorite out of that era.
Oh, I'm glad I turned it on for you.
Yeah, it went right up there, because Brave New World is still my favorite. I love that album, and A Matter of Life and Death is right next to it. It's like right there. It's like 1.5. You know, it's so good. It's so much better than I gave it credit for when it first came out. So
I would agree. I think that album is really, truly a lot better than a lot of fans give it credit for.
Yeah, and some of it was
because it's my favorite.
Some of it was the mix. I don't like the mix on that album either. You know,
right?
But but Senjutsu, if you like Maiden, if you like proggy Maiden, this is an album that you will enjoy. If you like Killers or the self-titled, you're probably gonna think this is like overblown and kind of.
Yeah, even if you're like a big like Fear of the Dark kind of clan.
Yeah,
it definitely isn't gonna tickle you the same way it tickles us. But when it tickles, it tickles.
Yeah, when it tickles, it's like
yeah.
And that's all I gotta say about that. So
yeah, there's Senjutsu. So check it out. If you're a Maiden fan, you got to definitely listen to it if you haven't already. If you haven't, what the hell are you waiting for?
Of course, go to Facebook and join our group. We'll see you again. Rock Talk with the DocRocker. Out. Metal.